My name is Frank Delgado, and the day my company celebrated my 35 years of service was also the day I finally understood my son had stopped seeing me as his father. The banquet hall lights dimmed as the events coordinator walked toward the podium, smiling at the 300 employees and guests gathered inside the Phoenix Convention Center. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, today we honor a man whose dedication built the backbone of this company. The screens behind her lit up with old photographs, me in 1989 wearing a hard hat 2 sizes too big, standing beside coworkers who'd long since passed on, company picnics, retirement dinners where I'd stood clapping for everyone else. Today it was finally my turn. I smiled politely, but my eyes kept drifting to the front row. One chair sat empty, a small card resting on it, reserved for Marcus Delgado, my son. The coordinator noticed. Mr. Delgado, would you like us to wait a few more minutes? I shook my head. Near the back of the room stood a young woman in a navy dress, nervously smoothing the fabric. Maria, my late army buddy Hector's daughter. Maria, I called softly. Would you sit with me? Her eyes widened. Me? Your father would have been sitting there, if he were still with us. She walked down the aisle and sat beside me. 20 minutes later, the CEO returned to the microphone with a surprise nobody had told me about. Years ago, I'd quietly asked the company to redirect my executive bonuses into something called the Sergeant's Legacy Fund, for the children of employees who'd sacrificed everything and never got to see it repaid. Today, the CEO announced, that fund reaches its first recipient, personally chosen by Frank himself. He turned toward Maria. Maria Ortiz will receive $650,000. The room erupted. Maria froze, hands over her mouth. I simply squeezed her shoulder. You earned this. Your father earned this. 3 hours later, sitting alone in my truck outside my small house in Mesa, my phone buzzed again and again. 94 missed calls. Most from Marcus. The rest from his wife, Renee, and a few numbers I didn't recognize, reporters, most likely. I turned the phone face down, because the story everyone had just watched on television had actually begun 6 years earlier. My wife Dolores passed from a stroke when Marcus was 29, already married, already building a life of his own. After she died, something between us went quiet. I buried myself in work. He buried himself in his career and Renee's world of country clubs and long weekends. Visits became, maybe next month. Calls became texts. I never blamed him entirely, grief changes people in different directions, but somewhere along the way, Renee's preferences quietly became Marcus's decisions, and I stopped recognizing the boy who used to help me change oil in the garage every Saturday. 3 months before the ceremony, the company announced it would honor employees with 35 years of continuous service. Only I qualified. Local news planned to broadcast it live. A week before, I drove to Marcus's house with the invitation. He was loading suitcases into the SUV. Heading somewhere? I asked. Long weekend in Cabo, he said, barely looking up, then glanced at the invitation. Oh, this is that thing they're televising? That's pretty cool, Dad. I'll be there, promise. I believed him, because no matter how old your child becomes, part of you still believes the promises they make. The night before the ceremony, my phone rang. Hey, Dad, Marcus said, too cheerful. So, listen, Renee found this incredible deal on the Cabo trip. We'd have to leave tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. The morning of my ceremony. I heard Renee's voice in the background. Tell him we'll celebrate when we're back. I didn't argue. I didn't guilt him. I simply said, that's fine, son, and hung up. Then I called Maria. I'd known Maria since she was 7, racing her bicycle down our street while her father Hector grilled carne asada in the backyard. Hector and I served 2 tours together. He pulled me out of a burning transport vehicle in '91 and never once let me thank him properly for it. When cancer took him, Maria was 18, too proud to accept help, working nights at a diner while finishing community college. I never gave her money outright, she wouldn't have taken it, but I quietly connected her with scholarships, fixed her car more times than I can count, and sat in the front row when she became a physical therapist, working with veterans at the VA clinic. When I called her the night before the ceremony, she didn't hesitate. "I'd be honored, Frank." The ceremony itself unfolded exactly as the coordinator promised: the slideshow, the stories from coworkers I'd forgotten I'd helped, the Crystal Award, and finally, the surprise nobody had rehearsed, the Sergeant's Legacy Fund, $650,000, handed to a woman who wasn't my blood but had shown up anyway. By the time I got home, the story was already spreading online. Comment sections filled with strangers sharing their own stories about parents forgotten by grown children. I felt uncomfortable reading them. People only knew one afternoon. They didn't know Marcus wasn't cruel. He'd simply believed there would always be another tomorrow. Headlights turned into my driveway that evening. Marcus climbed out first, shoulders slumped. Renee followed, arms crossed, carrying something closer to anger than regret. Inside, Renee spoke first. $650,000, Frank. You couldn't have at least warned us. I didn't know the final number myself, I said. You chose someone else's daughter over your own son. I chose someone who showed up. Marcus stared at the family photos on my wall, his Little League trophy, his graduation day, Dolores standing between us smiling. I haven't been in this house in almost a year, he said quietly. I walked to the hall closet and brought back an old shoebox. Inside were receipts, his college tuition marked paid in full, the down payment on his first house, invoices from his wedding. I thought scholarships covered most of this, he said, stunned. They covered some, I told him. You weren't supposed to know the rest. Parents don't raise children to collect thank you notes. He opened an envelope of his mother's handwritten birthday cards. His hands began to shake. Renee stood abruptly. This is unbelievable, now everyone gets to make Ryan look, she caught herself, make Marcus look like the villain. No one answered. She grabbed her purse and left. The door didn't slam quietly. Marcus didn't follow her. For the first time in years, he looked at me not like an obligation, but like his father. Over the following months, he called every morning, not to explain himself, just to ask how I was doing. He brought over his old fishing rods one Saturday. We drove to the same lake where I'd taught him to cast a line at 8 years old. I spent so long chasing bigger houses and nicer vacations, he said, staring at the water, that I forgot to make time for people. I didn't interrupt. He needed to hear himself say it. He and Renee separated quietly a few weeks later, no scandal, no revenge, just two people who'd built a life around convenience finally admitting it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Maria used part of the fund to open a free physical therapy clinic for veterans near the VA hospital, naming the front room after her father. She never mentioned my name in interviews unless someone asked directly. That was Hector's daughter through and through. Months later, at the fund's first official mentorship dinner, the seat beside mine wasn't empty. Marcus was already there, early. Wanted to make sure I didn't miss this one, he said. Walking to the parking lot afterward, he stopped beside my truck. Thank you, Dad. For what? For loving me even when I made it hard. I put a hand on his shoulder. Being your father was never the hard part. Waiting for you to find your way home, that was. He hugged me the way that says everything words can't. If this story reminded you of someone who sacrificed quietly for your family, don't wait for a special occasion to tell them what they mean to you. And if it touched you, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more stories about family, second chances, and choosing love over pride.